All right, so Keith Boyette, he's the Global Methodist Church's Chief Connectional Officer. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is. Has informed the Transitional Leadership Council that he will retire at the adjournment of the new denomination's convening General Conference in San Jose, Costa Rica, which is this September. Keith's work ethic, his attention to detail, his many gifts as a leader and legal expert, and above all, his abiding faith in God's grace and unfailing love made him the servant leader we needed as we launched the Global Methodist Church and continue to move through this challenging transitional season, said Ms. Karen Nicholas, chairwoman of the Transitional Leadership Council. In every way, he has given sacrificially to the Global Methodist Church. So, and this is really quite true. Keith has been a part of forming. So Keith is, the first time he really came on the scene, to my understanding, he was a big church pastor in the United Methodist Church, but he was one of the primary voices in the creation of the Wesleyan Covenant Association. But even before that, he was one of two conservatives on the crew that came up with the Protocol for Peaceful Reconciliation and that whole crew. And so he was there, and then he was the WCA, and then when the GMC got started, he was that guy. So he was a lawyer, and then he used his professional expertise in order to create what is essentially the GMC. And it's not to say he alone has done the work, but he has been the chief connectional officer, the primary one doing all this connecting. All right. And then Karen Nicholas is the chairwoman of the TLC, so she's a big deal as well. Boyette, who's now 71, received his call to a ministry. I don't think that A should be there. After he had already embarked upon a career as an attorney in Richmond, Virginia. Quote, I was married to my wife, Pamela, with 3 kids, working as a partner at a law firm from Hirschler, Fleischer, and Weinberg, Cox, and Allen, and very happily serving as a layman alongside sisters and brothers at River Road United Methodist Church in Richmond. Then, in a surprising and amazing way, God called me into the ministry. It was a shock to me, Pamela, and my work colleagues, but it was so profound, there was no way of ignoring it. Within 5 months, we packed our belongings and headed off to Wilmore, Kentucky, where I attended Asbury Theological Seminary. It was a faith-testing transition, and it taught us some important lessons. That was all Keith. Following his graduation, Boyette ventured back to Virginia, where he was officially ordained as both a deacon and an elder in the UMC's Virginia Annual Conference. He served one appointment before planting a local United Methodist Church in Spotsylvania, Virginia, known as Wilderness Community Church. Beginning with only his immediate family as attendees over the course of 19 years, he led an ever-growing number of members in building a spirit-filled congregation. And I'm pretty sure he told me recently he is still worshiping there as but he's not leading there. There's another clergy who stepped in. I'll ask him about that. Clergy colleagues in Virginia and around the country quickly recognized the skills Boyette brought to ministry in the United Methodist Church. He had already been elected a Southeastern Jurisdictional Delegate as a layman in 1992, and then after his ordination as a General Conference alternate clergy delegate in 2012 and 2016. Given his strong legal background, the delegates to the 2000 General Conference elected him to serve on the UN Church's Judicial Council, often referred to as its Supreme Court. He served on the council for 8 years, 4 as the body's secretary, and he wrote some of the panel's most important opinions during his tenure. So if you're curious about the judicial branch of the GMC, he surely had something to do with forming it alongside Tom Lambrecht, Chapel Temple, Jay Therrell, who's also a retired, or not retired, but former lawyer. Anyway, that branch is very robust, and TJ and I just got done last week. We posted an episode. We went through the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline, and we walked through the judicial section. And so in that, they also have a high court. I think it's, I couldn't tell you the name of it right now. It's another deceptive title where it just sounds nerdy and not very important, but it's super important. And anyway, if you're interested in that, check out the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline series that TJ and I have done on this channel. All right, shortly after the end of his service on the Judicial Council in 2009, Boyette joined Good News as a member of its board of directors. Established in 1967, Good News has long been recognized as the leading voice advocating for renewal and reform in the UMC. The board quickly elected him to serve as its chairman. He held the position while he continued to serve as the lead pastor at Wilderness Community Church. So I didn't know that he was the chairman of Good News. The only name I ever knew was Rob Renfro, but Keith apparently was on board in a high position of leadership there as well. So he's been all over. When Keith became the chair of our board of directors, Good News was in the middle of a challenging transition, said Rob Renfro, president and publisher of Good News Magazine. Quote, I had just been hired to follow Reverend Jim Dinger, the organization's widely respected leader for 26 years. During our transition, we found ourselves in the middle of the 2008 to 2009 Great Recession. Right along with most local churches and nonprofits, we suffered a significant dip in a gift revenue, and I was forced to make some difficult decisions. Keith's steady leadership of the board helped us navigate those challenges. The staff and board worked so well together that Good News eventually emerged from the recession stronger than ever. As Good News' president, I appreciated Keith's strong and faithful support as we charted our way forward. I've been amazed at all he's accomplished as he has led the Global Methodist Church. During Boyette's tenure as chairman, Good News convened a meeting of leading laity and clergy leaders in the summer of 2016, shortly after the close of yet another General Conference filled with disruptive protests and bitter debate. An open breach of the denomination was averted with the decision to create a special commission tasked with finding a way to keep the deeply divided church united or face the necessity of separation. In the light of the special commission, the leading laity and clergy leaders facilitated the creation of the Wesleyan Covenant Association, an organization dedicated to assisting theologically conservative local churches prepare for whatever lay ahead. So one of the things, I don't know if I'm going to remember to say this or not, so I'll say it right now. There are a lot of people who are good at starting things. There are not a lot of people who are good at starting things that keep going after they leave. So the WCA started under Keith Boyette. He was able to successfully hand it off to Jay Therrell, and now it's been handed off to another leader, and I should have his name memorized by now, but I don't. The WCA has continued to be relevant, pertinent, influential, and that says something. Good News Magazine, they're probably going to stop doing what they do, but it's not because it's not working out anymore. It's because the dynamics have changed. The things that Keith has been a part of sustain over time. Somebody look up that 1 Corinthians passage for me where it says that all that we build up will be tested by fire, and so the materials that we use, gold, silver, wood, straw, some will be burned away. I want to read that here in a minute, so help me with that chapter and verse. I'll come back to the comments in a minute. Quote, we sensed many United Methodists were looking for an organization like the WCA, said the Reverend Dr. Jeff Greenway, lead pastor of Reynoldsburg Community Church and the president pro tempore of the Allegheny West Provisional Annual Conference of the GMC. But we were overwhelmed by the response when we invited laity and clergy to our first gathering in Chicago, Illinois. I remember that. That was huge. In the fall of 2016. I was elected to serve as the chairman of the WCA's Global Council, and it quickly became apparent we needed to hire a full-time leader sooner than we anticipated. One of the best decisions the WCA's Global Council made was to hire Keith Boyette as its first president. With executive assistant Miss Teresa Marcus, a co-worker and lay leader at Wilderness Community Church, Boyette plunged into organizing the WCA movement in the spring of 2017. In just over 30 months, the organization chartered over 40 regional chapters, had thousands of dues-paying members around the world, held 3 global gatherings, and convened 2 WCA legislative assemblies as the organization prepared for whatever might happen at the Church's 2019 Special General Conference. I was one of those who was on the membership of the WCA. I served in the Oklahoma chapter of the WCA. But I also gladly paid my dues and have appreciated their ministry. To the surprise of many church leaders, the Special General Conference rejected the Council of Bishops' favored plan for resolving the bitter conflict confronting the denomination. It instead reaffirmed the church's biblically rooted teachings on marriage and its ordination standards. Some bishops and leading clergy castigated the will of their own General Conference, but over time they realized any reasonable way forward would require negotiating with theologically conservative leaders to find an amicable, fair, and orderly way to divide the denomination. By early fall of 2019, Boyette and Indiana State Senator Patricia Miller, president of the Confessing Movement, were appointed to serve as members of the mediation team alongside centrists, progressives, and leading bishops, with world-renowned attorney Kenneth Feinberg, who I interviewed, of course, as their mediator. The 16-member mediation team hammered out the protocol of reconciliation and grace through separation, a plan to divide the Church that the team outlined on January 3rd, 2020. As president of the WCA and still a practicing attorney, Boyette figured prominently in the negotiations and joined with bishops and centrists and progressive leaders in endorsing the plan's passage at the impending May 2020 General Conference. Man, how much longer is this article? Okay, it's not too much. Okay. United Methodists were at first taken aback by the protocol, having never heard of its bishops acknowledged that an amicable separation of the UMC was necessary and honorable way forward. However, within weeks, the plan of separation was met with relief and acceptance. By late January 2020, when many General Conference delegates met in Nashville, Tennessee for pre-conference information sessions, it was widely believed the protocol would pass in May, initiating the division of the denomination. Necessarily, the COVID pandemic forced the postponement of the 2020 General Conference. However, the UMC's Commission on General Conference also decided to postpone it in 2021, again in 2022, and then ultimately decided to put it off until 2024, long after the gathering resumed for other Christian denominations, international nonprofit organizations, and major sporting events. Quote, "I am convinced that the passage of the protocol would have spared many local churches annual conferences and the whole denomination a great deal of grief and heartache," said Boyette. Unfortunately, the United Methodist Church proved either unable or unwilling to hold a timely general conference, so delegates could have debated and voted on it. I'm confident it would have been approved, since it had the endorsement of leading bishops, centrist progressives, and traditionalists. And that's something worth remembering right now. We've had all this heartache with disaffiliation season after the United Methodist Church seems to have lost about a third of its churches. The odds are that the bloodletting would have been the same, but it would have not been as acrimonious or prolonged. And so it really is a sad thing that the protocol was not adopted. After repeated postponements, both the WCA Global Council and the GM Church's Transitional Leadership Council believed that the time had come, with or without the passage of the protocol, to launch the GMC on May 1st, 2022. Man, it's been a while, hasn't it? Keith negotiated for the protocol in good faith, and then, despite the lack of General Conference action, he made every effort to navigate the separation of the UMC in the spirit of its amicable and fair terms, said the Reverend Dr. Carolyn Moore, the WCA's chairwoman at the time. I had forgotten that. She was chairwoman of the... Man, so much history. And the lead pastor at Mosaic Church in Evans, Georgia, quote, "It has been a privilege to work alongside him over the past several years. I'm thankful for his leadership, dedication, and faithfulness to God's call on his life." In retirement, Boyette says he and his wife, an educator who retired 3 years ago, plan to enjoy visiting their growing family, traveling to new destinations and old ones, and of course, attending and participating in the life of Wilderness Community Church, now a local GMC congregation. "When I anticipated the position with the WCA and then the GMC, I never imagined I'd still be serving in 2024, said Boyette. Yet what a great privilege it has been to work alongside so many faithful lay people and clergy who have worked so hard and risked so much to launch a new church dedicated to the life-giving gospel of Jesus Christ. I will continue to fervently pray for, support, and serve the GMC right alongside all my sisters and brothers in the faith." The GM Church's TLC has formed a search committee for a new position with the title Connectional Operations Office. I think it should be Officer. It intends to post the position with a job description in the coming days. And I did see it had been posted, although I don't have it pulled up. They should have it linked here. The new position will include aspects of the office Keith filled, said Nicholas, but I think the differences will be greater than the similarities. Our times demanded a position with a great deal of power and the latitude to exercise it. The GM Church was blessed to have a humble and faithful servant like Keith to fill that critical role. So that's the end of that article. And then the cool thing is I recently was able to speak with Diane Burnett. That was Tuesday of this week, and she gave me permission to interview Keith this next week, and so I'll be talking to him about this. My primary interest with him is, of course, the upcoming convening conference and all of the things in place for that. But yeah, we'll talk about retirement, and I want to ask him good questions. So if y'all have questions you think that I should ask him, you can email me at plainspokenpod@gmail.com. I'll be happy to bring thoughtful and good questions to him. And of course, I might not, you might give me something thoughtful and good, and I might not ask him just because we're going to be limited to, he's not a long form guy. So I think an hour would really be pushing him. But anyway, I'm hopeful that I can talk to him then this week, but then also I'm wanting to do, once he finally retires, just kind of a congratulatory thing, because I am grateful for Keith's leadership. He's really poured himself out for this whole thing, and if he's done something that's been especially self-promoting, I haven't really seen it. So as far as I'm concerned, the Global Methodist Church has been very blessed to have his leadership. Guy's traveled all around the world. He's spent, I don't know, probably 80 hours a week serving the denomination, and it's doing quite well because of his capable leadership. So I don't know if I'll probably have a lot more to say about that, but for now, I'll go back to the comments and see what everybody has to say. Canadian Anglican, I'm thinking you've commented on some videos of mine recently, and I appreciate your thoughtful disposition. Feel free to tell me your name so I can call you something other than Canadian Anglican. Stephen Turner, will Keith's replacement be chosen by the TLC or the convening general conference? There we go. That was the question. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be chosen by the TLC. I don't think it's going to be, the hiring and firing of the denomination. Well, maybe this will get figured out at the convening conference, because the TLC is a temporary body as well. So after the convening conference, we're going to have a new chief connectional officer whose job title is going to be quite different from Boyette's, according to Kara Nicholas. But then the TLC is not going to exist anymore. What will exist, this is what I want to really prod Keith about, because I'm not clear at all. I have liked having a responsive central entity for the denomination. The United Methodist Church was always very frustrating to me. These different obscure levels of Byzantine bureaucracy, that doesn't work for me. But man, I really like having a central person, a central committee, and if there is a central committee, I know in the United Methodist Church the connectional table is supposed to be that, but it to my knowledge it never really worked like that. So anyway, I would have a committee responsible for it rather than the general conference. I just think the general conference needs to deal with other stuff. I could be wrong. That would be so stressful trying to review job descriptions for like 6-10 different guys and then trying to vote on all of them at general conference. That would be so unpleasant. But I'm not going to be a delegate, so y'all do what you want. Hey, Earl, good to see you. And Chris from Indiana. Earl was from North Carolina. All right, Dee has something. Oh, a report on the Laity training event. She says, it was great. I was over-prepared because I watched the series on the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline, but I was pleased there was no pushback on asking what some might view as controversial questions. I'm very pleased to hear that. And I'm not surprised. I've actually been pretty pleased. I know I chewed everybody out a couple weeks ago at everybody being too dramatic, but generally speaking, Global Methodist Church has been much less dramatic and acrimonious than the United Methodist Church, so let's defend that. She said it also includes each participant being assigned a mentor for 6 months. That is generally a good practice. The quality of your experience with a mentor is going to change very much based on the quality of your mentor. So I hope you have good mentors to draw upon. Eileen says applications for Boyette's replacement are currently being received until April 25th, ? I think, did it say that? Did it have a date on it? Here, I'll see if I can't look it up. Oh, that's not the right tab. Okay, let me try this again. Chief Connectional Officer, Global Methodist. Okay, GM Church. Well, now I'm on the wrong. There we go. So here's the job description. Applications are due on Friday, April 25th, 2024 by 8 p.m. Eastern Time. How long is this job description? 2 pages. Can I zoom in? $150K a year. This is one of the only things I really don't like about the Global Methodist Church. I think they pay their employees too much. I think we're just pretty much incentivizing an upper class bureaucracy, white collar thing again. But anyway, I'm sure they'll still be great. 150K. Location is to be negotiated. Okay, so here's the position overview. The GMC is seeking an experienced and dynamic connectional operations officer, COO, to serve as the denomination's COO, bearing responsibility for the accountable functioning of the Connectional Council. Would that be the TLC? General commissions. Ooh, I don't like that term. And task forces as they work to fulfill the General Conference's missional mandates between its conferences. Working in partnership with the church's assembly of bishops. Oh, we're not going to have a college of bishops. We're going to have an assembly of bishops. Its connectional council. Man, I didn't know these terms had been decided. They aren't in the transitional book yet. And its executive staff members, the COO, will oversee the operations of the general church. I guess you have to call them something. You can't just say whatever these bodies will be called. So this is a list of things that they will do. They'll consult regularly with the Assembly of Bishops and the Connectional Council regarding missional priorities, work with the chairperson and secretary of the Connectional Council to schedule all council meetings. Oh man, this is so boring. I'm sure it won't be when they're actually doing it. Hiring and firing, convening executive directors, oversee the budget. It's a general overseer, a big bureaucrat nerd. Hopefully, well trained in decent doctrine. And then here are the qualifications. So if you're interested in that, looks like it's on the Global Methodist website. So I will not be applying for this position. That would not fit me at all. So anyway, if you know someone who is faithful, then feel free to recommend them. I think that would be great. But they have a short window to apply, so get their attention.